Good morning. This is GE 6101, Readings in Philippine History. For this week, again, two selected primary resources will be discussed under controversies and conflicting analyses for selected primary sources. At the end of this module, you are expected to recognize historical events using the primary resources. The Code of Kalantiaw and sa aking mga kabata. And number two, interpret and analyze the primary sources selected for today. So, as I've said, primary sources like Order of Kalantiaw and the poem sa aking mga kabata by Dr. Jose Rizal, which is a poem famous with the lines that we are using during buwan ng wika. And the line is, ang hindi magmahal sa sariling wika ay higit pa sa hayop at malansang isda. Now, let us first discuss the Code of Kalantiaw. The Code of Kalantiaw was actually named after Datu Kalantiaw, known as the Raha Bendahara Kalantiaw. He was a mythical character that thought to make the main lawful code in the Philippines. That is said to be Code of Kalantiaw in the island of Negros, where he was the chief. Again, they say that the Code of Kalantiaw is said to be mythical, authentic code. In the epic story of Maragtas, it was named after the creator, who was Datu Kalantiaw, and believed to have composed it in 1433. Until study made by William Scott during his dissertation came out and believed that it was a hoax. And he said that the code is only a deception. The Code of Kalantiaw was a supposed legal code in the epic history of Maragtas. It is said to have been written in 1433 by Datu Kalantiaw, who was the chief of the island in Negros. But today, the code is believed by many historians to have been a hoax. It was not actually written by Raha Kalantiaw, but by Jose E. Marco in 1913. As a part of his historical fiction, The Ancient Legends of the Island of Negros, that he attributed to a priest named Jose Maria Pavon. Now, let us define a hoax. A hoax is a falsehood deliberately fabricated to masquerade as the truth. It is distinguishable from errors in observation or judgment, rumors, urban legends, pseudosciences, and April Fool's Day events that are passed along in good faith by believers or as jokes. Teodoro Agoncillo described Code of Kalantiaw as a disputed document, a controversial document, but despite the doubts on its authenticity, some history texts continue to present it as historical fact. But in 1917, a historian named George Wilson Kuya wrote also about the Code of Kalantiaw in his book, Pre-Hispanic History of the Philippines. But this time, he moved the location of the code's origin from Negros to the Panay province of Aklan, because He said that it may be related to the Ati-Atihan festival. Other authors throughout the 20th century gave credibility to the story and the code. But in 1965, William Henry Scott, who studied his doctoral dissertation in University of Santo Tomas, did his research on the Hispanic sources for the study of Philippine history. Eventually, William Scott presented that the code was just a forgery committed by Marco. Now, Scott presented these conclusions in his doctoral dissertation, discussed and defended on June 16, 1968, before a panel of eminent Philippine historians, which included Teodoro Agoncillo, Horacio de la Costa, Marcelino Foronda, Mercedes Gross, Santa Maria, Nicolas Zafra, and Gregorio Saide. But there was no question raised about the chapter which he called the contributions of Jose in Marco to Philippine historiography. In 1971, an award or a decoration named Order of Kalantiaw was created. And this is to be awarded to any citizen of the Philippines for exceptional and meritorious services to the Republic in the administration of justice and in the field of law. But then Scott published his findings debunking the code in his book, Hispanic Source Materials for the Study of Philippine History. Later on, Philippine historians removed the code from the future literature regarding Philippine history. They questioned the authenticity of the code previously by other scholars, but despite Scott's findings, there was no changes in the textbooks and in academic curriculum until 30 years following the release of Scott's publication in 1969. So the Code of Kalantiaw continued to be taught as part of ancient Philippine history. But in 2004, the National Historical Institute, or NHI resolution number, declared the Code of Kalantiaw has no valid historical basis code for. Number one, the official affirmation that the Kalantiaw Code is a 20th century fraudulent work by Jose Marco. Number two, the President of the Philippines stopped to honor retiring Supreme Justices and other international dignitaries with the Order of Kalantiaw and revoking Executive Order 234, which recognized Datu Bandahara Kalantiaw as the first Philippine lawgiver and declared a Hall of Fame and library to be constructed in his honor in Batan, Aklan as a national shrine. And this NHA resolution was approved by the Office of the President in 2005. And so that's it. That's about the Code of Kalantiaw. Now let's move on to the next primary source material or primary source entitled Sa Aking Mga Kabata. Sa Aking Mga Kabata is the first poem Rizal wrote at the age of 8. They said that it was written using the Tagalog language and entitled Sa Aking Mga Kabata. Okay, so To My Fellow Youth is a poem about the love of one's native language written in Tagalog, and it was widely attributed to the Filipino national hero Jose Rizal, who supposedly wrote it in 1868 at the age of 8. There is no evidence to support authorship by Rizal, and several historians now believe it to be a hoax. And the actual author of the poem is suspected to have been the poets Gabriel Beato Francisco or Hermenegildo de Cruz. Sa aking mga kabata was widely taught in Philippine schools to point out Rizal's intelligence and early development of his nationalistic ideals because it is said that Jose Rizal wrote the poem at the age of 8. A passage of the poem often paraphrased as, ang hindi marunong magmahal sa sariling wika, masahol pa sa hayop at malansang isda, which we encounter most frequently these lines during the Buwan ng Wika celebration. And here are the contentions. There was no manuscript for sa aking mga kabata written in Rizal's handwriting exists. The poem was published in 1906, a decade after his death, in a book authored by the poet Hermenegildo de Cruz. And Cruz claimed that he received the poem from another poet, Gabriel Beato Francisco, who in turn received it in 1884 from an alleged close friend of Rizal, Saturnino Racelis. But Jose Rizal never mentioned anyone by the name of Saturnino Racelis during his lifetime. Now, it was believed that the poem may have actually been written by Cruz or Francisco. And another proof that Jose Rizal did not write the poem is that historian Ambeth Ocampo and national artist of the Philippines and writer Virgilio Almario and others have debunked Rizal's traditional authorship of the poem based on the following. The poem used the Tagalog word kalayaan, but Rizal first encountered the word when he was 25 years old, and that is 17 years after he supposedly wrote the poem. Rizal first came across the word kalayaan, or as it was spelled kalayahan, through a Tagalog translation by Marcelo H. del Pilar of Rizal's own essay, El Amor Patrio. They suspected that it was not really Jose Rizal who wrote the poem because of the fluency and sophistication of the Tagalog used in the poem did not match Rizal's grasp of the Filipino language or the Tagalog language. Also, the 8-year-old Rizal, apparently familiarity with Latin and English is also questionable if it was translated only to Tagalog and started on writing in English. And in his memoir as a student in Manila, a year after the poem's supposed writing date, he admitted only having a little knowledge of Latin from lessons by a friend of his father. And also, the poem makes use of the letters K and W. Whereas during Rizal's childhood, Tagalog spelling was based on Spanish orthography where neither letters were used because the letters C and U were used instead. That the shift in Tagalog and later Filipino orthography from C to K and U to W were even proposed by Rizal himself as an adult and was later made official in the early 20th century by the Philippine government as per the grammarian Lopica Santos proposal. Now let us hear the poem.
Ang bayan sa kanyang salitang kaloob. Sanlang kalayaan, nasa bansa, katulad ng ibang pasasya. Pagkat ang salita ng isang kahatulan, sa bayan, sa bayan, at ang isang tao'y katulad kabayan, ay hindi magmahal sa kanyang salita, sa hayop at malansang isda. Kaya mahaba sa wikang Tagalog tulad sa Ingles, Kastila, at Salita. Sapagkat ang poong maalam ang siyang nagdawang bigay sa atin. Salita natin tulad sa ito na may alfabeto at salita. Kaya nawalay salamat.
Okay, that's it. That's about the two primary sources, Order of Kalantiaw and sa aking mga kabata.